I guess it's about time I do a video on famous or infamous vacuum wipers. So first of all, if you're new to this, you've never heard of vacuum wipers. What the hell are they? So most cars nowadays, if not all of them, these garbage on wheels that they make today, they're all electric. So yes, the wiper motors, the arms that move around like this with rubber on them that clean your windshield, they're moved. An electric motor causes them to move. However, there are two other types of operation, two other things that move these wipers, and very common in the 60s were vacuum wipers. And I'll sort of spoil it to you right away. I love them. You'll understand why, and I'll explain a few things to you in just a second. But just so you know, vacuum wipers are, just as the name suggests, they're not electric. There's no motor, there's no wires going to it. And that's the beauty of it, at least to me. They're actually run by the vacuum from the engine. So vacuum from the engine, what the hell is that? Well, open the hood on your car and remove the air filter, and when the engine is running, you'll feel a suction of air. The engine actually sucks air from the atmosphere. It sucks that air, it sucks air around you into the engine, mixes it with gasoline, explodes it, and out comes the exhaust gases. So it's breathing. The engine is breathing, just like me and you are sucking in air. We're breathing in air and expelling it as exhaust. The car is doing the same thing. And these wipers are, what causes them to move is this suction. The engine is just like a vacuum cleaner. It's sucking in that air. That's why you need an air filter, because if you get sand and dirt and junk going into there, you'll ruin the engine. Right? So that's sort of how they work. So basically there's a pipe. In most primitive designs, there was just a pipe, literally a rubber pipe, a rubber hose coming from the engine, from the intake on the engine, someplace on the engine, doesn't really matter where. I just there's a plug in my engine, I just put it there on the intake manifold. I put it there. And that pipe goes to the little wiper motor, and to me it's beautiful because it's so simple and it's all mechanical. It's very, very reliable. There's no way you can really damage that thing. And inside that little pump, it's like a U-shaped thing, and there's like a little valve that lets the suction in. So that suction action actually pushes like a piston or a paddle, and that's what moves the wipers. So the only there's pretty much only two maybe three weaknesses or fail points on this system. First of them is the hose. If that hose is undamaged, then that suction will leak and will not reach the wipers, and then the wipers won't work properly. And neither will the engine, for that matter. If you've got a leak, if you've got a car with vacuum wipers and you disconnect that hose, the engine will either die or it'll run really badly right away, because it's starting to get too much air inside, right? So that's probably the most common problem people have with vacuum wipers. The second is the seal on the. Once again, it's all to do with leaks, with air leaks, vacuum leaks. So on that little piston, or that little paddle, there's grease around it, and that seals the movable parts. If that grease is old, which it usually is in most cases, and it's all hardened up, then again you'll get a vacuum leak through there, and the wipers won't work properly. Right, and like I said, neither will the engine. In my car, I went a bit crazy, and I actually put a shut-off valve on it, just how I had one laying around, and I thought it would be interesting. So basically, if one day the wiper starts to not work properly, and it causes the engine not to work properly, I can just shut that valve off, and then the engine will go back to working just fine. Or I can just shut off that part of the system for repairs. And like I said, there's not really, in most cases, they're just mechanical parts. There's no repair unless there's rust, or obviously I don't know how it works. The specifics on every single car, but on every single vacuum car, that's the concept. In my car, that little pump is actually made of aluminum. It's cast aluminum, so you can't really. It's a rust doesn't affect it, right? So it's as good as new. The only thing I did change was the grease. The original grease, of course, was all hardened up, and so it caused very sluggish moving of the wipers. I did this years ago, so unfortunately I didn't do a video on it, but I might do some other time if I have the time. But so that's the second possible. That's probably the second, or maybe one of the most common problems. And the only other problem that you could have is the little valve itself. So there's a valve that moves either side to side or up and down, and that goes. So what happens is vacuum goes to one side and pushes the wiper that way, and then it has to go to the other side to push it back up that way. So it goes like that, like that. So vacuum to one side, then vacuum to the other. Vacuum to one side, vacuum to the other. And that's just a little valve. It's almost like a little steam engine. And if that valve gets broken or worn out, then again, it will not work properly. I think in some cars that, if maybe in my car, I don't really remember, but that little valve might have been made of plastic. And like I said, plastic is garbage, and it's a source of weakness. So maybe that valve is broken. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I might have seen or spoken to someone that had a little broken valve. However, it's just an easy fix. You just get a little tab of steel, or preferably brass, that's the best, or stainless, that's even better. And you just drill some holes. It's nothing fancy, it's just a little valve. Just that little valve is just a little tab with 2 or 3 holes on it. It's not like a valve with mechanisms. It's just very, very simple. So by far, it's the simplest of all 3 types of wiper operation systems that I know of. The only other system is hydraulic. And I think that was very, very interesting as well. So there is actually something called hydraulic wipers. And I know that now because of a comment on one of the videos I did on the 66 Thunderbird. So 1966 Thunderbirds came with hydraulically activated wipers. And to me, once again, that's beautiful. It's a machine. It's not a little motor with brushes. It's a machine. It's like a tractor, an excavator, Excavators don't use electric motors. They use hydraulic systems to move them. Because why? Because they're very simple, reliable, and indestructible, really. So I think that's beautiful, like I said. Although, so the pump on the Thunderbird is actually, the power steering pump actually also runs the wipers. Believe it or not, that's crazy, right? The only sort of downside to that is that system is a bit more complex, and who hasn't had power steering leaks somewhere? Everybody I know has at some point had leaks on their power steering. So if I'm not mistaken, it suggests that if you have that problem, then you will have also a problem on the on the wipers. So it could potentially lead to a bit of a dangerous situation where you have no power steering and no wipers, no visibility, right? So that's sort of the downside. But it is a hydraulic system, so I'm pretty sure, I haven't seen it personally, I haven't worked on it personally, but it should be a very indestructible system. And hell, if you have a power steering leak, you just stop wherever. You should have some in the back, some power steering oil. You just put some more in. You're good to go. Till you get to a gas station or wherever you have to go, right? So it's really not that big of a deal. So once again, there's three types of wipers. There's vacuum wipers, there's electrical wipers, and there's hydraulic wipers run from the steering, power steering pump. I don't know of other cars, to be honest. I think that the hydraulic wipers are a bit rare. Before the Thunderbird, I had never ever heard of such a thing. But I love it. I really like the idea behind it, and especially wipers. A wiper motor. The wiper is cleaning. It's cleaning dust. It's cleaning rain. A lot of rain, snow. An electrical motor doesn't seem. It seems to me like an electrical motor is not the choice of motor for something that's in contact with water and snow, right? So that's sort of my thinking behind it. But there have been that 1947 DeSoto had electric wipers, and I guess they can all be fine as long as they're made properly. But by far, to me, I really love the vacuum wipers, because they are the simplest of all of them. There's a lot of components in making a hydraulic pump. A vacuum pump, it's extremely simple. Like I said, it's just a little valve with a piston. That's all it is. So by far, it's the simplest. However, they have become a bit infamous because while you are accelerating, the engine doesn't have much vacuum. So as soon as you really hit the gas, you lose that wiper force. In cars that are run, the vacuum wipers are run directly from the engine. And then of course some people say that it would go very slowly and then very fast sometimes, and that's sort of indeed the case, because once again, it's all dependent on the vacuum from the engine, which is all dependent on acceleration. If there's acceleration, there's a lot of vacuum, and then as it decelerates, it starts to gain more vacuum, so it starts to move faster. The wipers start to move faster. However, there are ways to overcome that, and honestly, if it's just during quick acceleration, then it's not really a big deal. To me, it's not really a big deal if you just lose visibility for a second or two, and it's not. I don't think it's a complete loss. I'm not at liberty to say a lot about it because my car, although it has vacuum wipers, it's a bit different. The Rambler, 1963 Rambler American, actually has a vacuum booster, all right? And what that is, it comes, the fuel pump, it comes with the fuel pump. So there is a 2-in-1 fuel pump and vacuum booster. It comes all in one piece, and it's just, it's run mechanically by a lever on a cam on the engine. So it's just how you have your regular fuel pump with the lever on it. The one that I have, it's actually the fuel pump with another big weird looking piece at the bottom, and that's the vacuum pump. So what that does is it actually takes vacuum from the engine and boosts it. So even if the engine is accelerating and it's got no vacuum in itself, the mechanical force of the engine is still moving, and it's moving that pump, that vacuum pump, and it's providing sufficient vacuum force to the wiper. So I think that's pretty interesting. So I guess that indeed at some point they realized that vacuum alone from the engine wasn't really the best, and so they decided to add a vacuum pump or a vacuum booster. And so maybe that's why I have such a good experience with the vacuum wipers. So in case you've never heard of such a thing, just you can look it up. I did see one for sale on eBay for some time ago. It was expensive. Like I said, it's a fuel pump and a vacuum pump. And you could possibly fit that on other cars. I don't know if other cars had that as optional equipment, or I don't know, even AMC. I don't know if, to the best of my knowledge, those vacuum pumps or vacuum boosters were all standard equipment on their car. So, but if AMC had it, you can certainly adapt something like it. If you find that the vacuum wipers aren't enough. However, like I said, a lot of people, a lot of times blame things for the wrong reasons. So I've heard a lot of people talk bad about vacuum wipers, but maybe it's not the vacuum wiper itself. Maybe it's just the hose, the width of the hose that also matters. If you have a wider hose, you will get more vacuum force, right? The pressure is still the same, or the vacuum pressure is still the same, but the force isn't. It certainly isn't. It increases. So maybe some guy, just put a little pipe in it, and that's why you get sluggish wipers. Or maybe you still have the original 1935 grease inside that little motor there. And then you're blaming it, you're saying that vacuum wipers aren't good, maybe you just didn't do enough maintenance. So once again, they work fine for me even really when the car is accelerating. It does get slower when I'm accelerating, but it still works fine, and it's extremely fast right thereafter. So I've driven through the snow, I've driven through a mini storm at one point where people were actually stopping, and they just worked fine for me. So maybe that's, like I said, I haven't driven a car, I haven't really seen a car with 100% vacuum wipers from the engine alone. I'm just saying, so I can't really comment a lot on that. However, like I said, I do think that there's room for improvement if necessary. So for me, it still remains the best system available. I think it's better than the electrical. I think it's better than the hydraulic. Why? Because it's extremely simple and it's extremely durable. It's just hoses, like I said. I mean, for crying out loud, you could literally put a copper pipe in it instead of a hose, and make it completely solid like that, and if you really wanted to. So for me, that's the way to go, and I love it. I love it. Okay, so I think I talked about a lot about the maintenance. Maintenance, that's all there is. It's cleaning it and new grease in it. Maybe, I don't know, how long does grease last? When does it start to become hard? I don't know, in maybe 2 decades, 20 years or more. So it's literally pretty maintenance free. But like I said, when you get a car and that you're restoring, or that people haven't really fully restored it, maybe it still has that original like I said, it still has that original hardened up grease there. So it's not a reason. Hardened up grease to me isn't a good enough reason to start talking bad about vacuum wipers. And like I said, that's the only maintenance you have. And the hose, it's just like I said, hoses and grease. And yeah, that's, I think that's pretty much it. What else can I say? Just trying to think if I have forgotten about anything. Yeah, pretty much it. They are, oh yeah, by the way, they are infinitely variable. The speed, right? You can change, you can change the velocities as much as you want by opening or closing the valve, going to the vacuum wipers. And usually it's just, you know, a little lever or like a valve that opens or closes a hole. That's all it is. Not really much more to it. When did they stop making them? I'm guessing by 1970 they all switched to, I guess, yeah, I must say that by 1970 all cars switched to electrical motors. You know, I get people a lot saying that, well, you know, if vacuum wipers were so good, why did the industry switch to electrical? Well, you know, people sometimes think I'm crazy for saying that cars have only gotten worse. Well, they have, and you know, be it known to you that the majority of people have usually been wrong. So just because I'm the odd one out doesn't mean I'm crazy. In fact, on the quite contrary, the great majority of the population, the mass, has in most cases always been wrong. It's always been like that. It's been like that since Galileo Galilei. You know, people used to think that the world was square until some guy came and said, "No, the world is round." Then everybody treated him like he was nuts. And there was a theory that the sun revolved around the earth. And then somebody came along and says, no, it's the other way around. The earth revolves around the sun. And once again, these kind of people were ridiculed. And so I'm not crazy at all to say that cars have indeed become worse in terms of durability and pretty much to me in terms of everything else. Fuel economy has increased, but to an expense that to me makes it not worth it. Right? And I mean, if you think, you know, just look at yourself, you know, where is your car? How long have you had your car? You know, I see people talking, you know, saying that they like this brand or this car, but they've only had it for maybe 4 or 5 years, not more than that. And then you ask them, well, where is that car? And it says, oh, it's got scrapped, went to the junkyard, or, you know, I sold it because the transmission blew, or, you know, the sensors on it were thousands of dollars. I sold it because it wasn't worth fixing anymore. So it's easy for you to talk bad about the classic car, an old car, but, you know, I've got a car that's been around for over half a century. I've worked on a car that's been around for 100 years, and you know it still works fine and perfectly. You know, and it still works great. I like, where is your car? You know, you're happy. You're talking about your little Toyota, you know, like your little Corolla, and well, where the hell is it? You know, will you have it in the next 5-10 years? So just ask yourself those questions, and ask yourself, well, is this guy really crazy, or have cars indeed got worse and much easier to break and much harder to replace and repair? You know, and the other question you should ask yourself is there anything that a classic car has good, you know, that a modern car has good that a classic car doesn't have? Like you said, it's just things you have to consider, and you have to, you know, set your opinion aside sometimes and look at things objectively and analyze those things, right? So I know I've gone a bit off topic here, but there you have it, vacuum wipers and a bit of criticism on people that criticize classic cars.